How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji, host of Tier Talk, and someone emailed me a question that I really want to get to. So no sponsors for this. I just want to kind of get right into this question, and it's about what happens if you run into a family member or a loved one or a friend, a close friend, inside the correctional facility that you work at. So they're incarcerated and you run into them. What should you do? And it's a great question. I never covered it before, but it's something worth asking, and definitely something that I want to answer. So in this case here, let's say I'm working a unit and I bumped into a family member, or an ex-girlfriend or whatever the case may be. What is my next step? Well, first off, we may not always be aware where our families are, inside the system if they're incarcerated. We may not always be aware where they're at. The system can move people around. So once it's made aware to you that, the inmate is inside your facility, sometimes it's good just for us to keep check. If we know someone's inside the facilities, that we work at within the state, then it's good for us to kind of keep track of that, but sometimes we forget, it gets past us. So I'll kind of give you that as an excuse the first time around. But if you see that person and you don't report something, that's no longer an excuse. You failed to do what you're supposed to do in your professional role. And the reason why is when you have a family member or a loved one, there's a couple of things. There's a risk to be compromised, but there's also a safety and security aspect, and I'll get to that. So the first thing you do is you report it to your area supervisor, and you make it known. You write a report. You do whatever you got to do. That report has to be written. Now, in the report, it may ask you, do you have conflict working with that individual or not? You're going to put no. That's fine because you're professional. It shouldn't bother you. I'm sure you'll be able to handle your duties. But however you answer it, it shouldn't change the mind of administration who should move that inmate, regardless. So even though we may put, hey, I bumped into this inmate's a family member of mine, but be advised it won't affect how I do my duties. It doesn't matter. Management should take note of that and still move the inmate anyway, because there is a bit of a conflict here. So again, automatically write that report, hold that report, keep that somewhere, because you never know where you go out in your career, and you may bump that inmate again, and you need to have it on record that you made an attempt at one point in your career to say, hey, this person's in the system. Also, on a prior note, it doesn't hurt to, once you have a family member that's been incarcerated, to let the system know, because then you can kind of put a little onus on them, because they're supposed to protect you as well. So it puts a little onus on them as to where they put that inmate. You wrote a report prior, hey, listen, I had a family member that was locked up. Just want you to let you know. So hopefully they don't make it to this facility, but if they do, I would like to see if I can get that inmate shipped out. So again, that puts a lot of liability off you the moment you write that report and you let the facility know that you have a family member who's locked up. So whether you know prior or whether you know the moment, because sometimes we don't know sometimes what our family does, and they find themselves in prison and you're like, oh my God, or in jail. Maybe jail could deal with this a lot more, because jail is kind of immediate. It could happen at any day. You never know what your family members do. It's sad, but it's true. But there is a safety concern too. Family members, once they're inside the wall and it gets made aware that they're related to you, or they know you, let's say it's an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever it is, and they know you, they have information on you, that could become leverage, and inmates could threaten that inmate for that information. So now, just by you being in that same facility working together, both your lives could be at risk. Safety and security could easily be jeopardized. First, on your end, as the officer or the civilian staff member, your information can get out there easily, because this information, this loved one has. So if inmates pressure him enough, he may be willing to give up that information. Again, the family members we know on the outside are going to be a lot different than the family members or the loved ones we know on the inside, because of pressure that other inmates can put on them. So unfortunately, people can change when they're under a lot of stress to do certain things. So the close friend that you had on the streets, or that family member that you thought you loved, may be a little bit different inside the prison because of the stress other inmates can put on them. So this person that you were close to could change, because you never know what's being pushed on him from the other inmates. So you have information about yourself that you don't want to get around. It's your personal information that this individual knows. So that's another reason why you're going to write that report. And you can even put on the end of the report, by growing up with this inmate, or by dating this inmate, there's information that he may have that I feel is not privy to the inmate population. and I would need that information protected. And the reason why you want to do that is because most likely you have a internal investigations unit who's going to investigate your report, see what's going on, and talk to you and the inmate. And I've heard sometimes, most of the time, they just talk to the staff member and they don't talk to the inmate. They should be talking to the inmate, because the inmate should be held accountable if he releases any or she releases any personal information about you. So when they do talk to the inmate, they, get what they got to get, see if there's any conflict, whatever it is, but then also mention you have personal information on this individual. And if we find out that you give out this personal information to the inmate population, you'll be held accountable for that. So again, there's a safety and security aspect. So it's good to get the inmate out, because again, you're also protecting the inmate from the threat or the push from those inmates to say, hey, give me that information. Give me what you have on that person. So I always recommend that management takes a look at all this and says, you know what, it's just in our best interest to get that individual out. Let's ship that individual out and take note. So if this person ever travels in their career, we move the inmate. You never move the staff member. You move the inmate. Inconvenience them, but never move the staff member. And for the staff member, write those reports, keep a copy of that report just in case something ever happens. You could always say, hey, I wrote a report. I did what I was supposed to do. So when this inmate came back into the facility, you failed to protect me. And if your personal information gets out there, God forbid, well, you put it out there that there was an inmate in the system that knew you. And again, did you speak to that inmate when I wrote that report, internal? Did you speak to that inmate when I wrote the report? No? Well, that's your fault, because you failed to protect me. You failed to put something on that inmate that says, hey, if you say something about me that's personal, they're going to be held accountable for it. So again, just a quick little blog. As always, guys, stay safe, subscribe, hit that bell button.